Lead me not unto temptation, especially a bookstore, for I cannot say no to books. Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. Saturday, April 26, 2025 was Independent Bookstore Day. This is where independent bookstores sort of gather together to celebrate the fact that there are independent bookstores and encourage people to go shopping. Their website says one day, 50 states, 1,600 plus bookstores. So that's really rather great that there are so many bookstores participating across America. Now, I, of course, had to go and do something for Independent Bookstore Day. Where I am in Fredericksburg, we only have one used bookstore. But Charlottesville, Virginia is about an hour and 50 minutes away. It houses the University of Virginia, and there were quite a number of used bookstores or new bookstores, 7 bookstores. They had this Bookstore Crawl with 7 bookstores, and they gave you this nice little piece of paper where you could get a check mark off if you visited the bookstore and bought something. And there was a prize for someone who completed and bought something for every store. So, of course, I had to go on this Bookstore Crawl. It is a rather pretty drive from Fredericksburg to Charlottesville, Virginia, and my wife and I enjoyed the scenic countryside. But what did I get at all these bookstores in Charlottesville, Virginia? Now, the area where these bookstores are located has this wonderful pedestrian shopping mall. They basically closed down all the streets, paved them over, so it's just for pedestrians and shopping. Now, there are a few cross streets where automobiles are allowed to cross. I guess that's something that we pedestrians just have to put up with, but it is a very beautiful place to shop. I'm going to include just a quick panoramic view of one part of this pedestrian mall. The first store I visited was Second Act Books. They are a used bookstore, and I got some goodies. Johnny Come Lately by Frank Kane. It says on the back, with over 5 million copies of his scorching books in print, Frank Kane is recognized as one of the world's top writers of mystery and suspense. I'm actually not familiar with him. It wasn't just the setup that bugged Liddell. 2 murders, a blackmail, and a messy scandal. It was the girl, a girl he could really go for, and she was mixed up in both murders and blackmail, and especially the scandal. Last year, for Dr. November, I read my first Eric Ambler book. He was a British author around World War II who wrote some spy thrillers. I read The Epitaph for a Spy, and I thought it was pretty good. And I got 2 Eric Ambler books from Second Act Books. One is The Light of Day, and this one is published in 1962. This one is State of Siege, and this one was published in 1956. So it looks like some exciting spy thrillers. Caught in the crossarm of terrorism. Malaysia was the land ravaged by treachery, turmoil, and violent revolution. Every corner held a secret, waiting to strike. Every smile told a lie. And on this landscape of menace, 2 lovers, a tough British engineer and a beautiful half-caste, struggle to escape the empty Death Inn. State of Siege. Murder Twice Told by Donald Hamilton. I have a number of Donald Hamilton books. He was a mystery and crime writer. I have read some of him in the hard case crime edition. I have some of his older paperbacks that I have not read. But this one is 2 short stories, or probably novellas. The Mutiny on the HMS Bounty by William Bly. I'm presuming this is William Bly's nonfiction account of that mutiny. It only cost $1, so how could I say no? Shoot the Piano Player, a crime novel from the 1950s. I think I've read 1 or 2 of his other books. He was an established crime writer back in the day. Appointment in Samara by John O'Hara. I have talked about this book a little in some previous videos. It might be a candidate for one of the great American novels. I don't think it would win, but it was pretty good, and I wanted to reread it. And lo and behold, it was sitting on the shelf, so I bought it. I did read it in the 90s, but what's interesting about this edition is that in the back, there are some photographs of its previous owner, or someone that the previous owner wanted to take pictures of. It is 2 men in some sort of hat, and they're wearing spangles and white pants and wearing no shirt with something crossed over them. And then there's this other picture of, it looks like these men are in some sort of parade. I think there's a technical term that booksellers use for these photos and items left in books. I don't know what that term is. Those photos, I'm just going to leave them in this book for whoever has to deal with my estate. But I do want to get around to rereading this. The next bookstore was Blue Whale Books. I got The Manuscript Found in Sarasota by Jan Potocki. This is translated from the Polish. It was originally written in about 1750s, somewhere around there. It's Gothic and supernatural fiction with some eroticism thrown in. Middle Passage by Charles Johnson. This is the National Book Award winner. About the Middle Passage. It is historical fiction. I've never read it, but I heard it's a pretty good book. The next store I visited was Dedelus Books. Now, Dedelus has this weird cellar with lots of old hardcover books. It would have been a great source if I wanted to do a follow-up of obscure books that people don't read anymore, but I didn't have enough time. However, I did get some paperbacks. The Puppet Masters by Robert A. Heinlein, a science fiction novel from the 50s. I have read this before, and I want to read it again, and I just like these old paperbacks. Butterfield 8 by John O'Hara. Since I'm going to be reading Appointment in Samara and maybe From the Terrace by John O'Hara, I decided why not pick up this one too. I think it is his second most famous book. Nick Carter, Run, Spy, Run. The first in this Nick Carter series. Now, Nick Carter is listed as the author, but he is also the narrator. So obviously this book has a author using a pen name. This is the first in the series. I have enough Nick Carter books to last me 20 years because I read one every August. So I was very pleased to find the first in the series. Unfortunately, the spine has gotten a lot of sun fading, but I'll deal with that. I also picked up Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I did listen to the audiobook of this probably in the late 90s, maybe sometime in the aughts. And I got through about 3 of the Vampire Chronicles before throwing in the towel. Many people claim that this is a really fantastic horror novel. I don't remember it all that well. There were some good scenes in it. So I want to reread this, and I'm going to be reading this in September. I have at least one person joining me for a buddy read. Do you want to read or buddy read Interview with the Vampire in September? It's open to more people. I next went to Hello Comics. Now, I am not a comic book reader, but I did purchase a postcard from the shop to say that I bought something from every bookstore participating in this crawl. The next bookstore was The Beautiful Idea. This is an LGBTQ plus bookstore. I think it also had some books on anarchism. I did not find the anarchism books, but I did pick up this short horror novel, The Ooze by Tash McAdam. And it is an LGBTQ plus horror novel. I believe the author is trans. Not 100% positive, but I'm willing to try a book like that. If I don't like it, I can always put it in a little free library. But for horror mayhem, I think this is going to be a really good option because it is only 78 pages long. I guess I can't quite call it a short story, but maybe, that print is really large. And my aging eyes like large print. The last stop on my bookstore crawl in the downtown pedestrian mall of Charlottesville, Virginia, was New Dominion Books, and I snagged a copy of Water by Rumi. Rumi is the Sufi metaphysical poet. This is translated directly from the Persian by Halia Liza Ghaffari. I did learn the last time I read one of her books of translation that many of Rumi's translations are not from the Persian. They are from translators translating from other languages and improving on that translation. I think I prefer these translations directly from the Persian. This translator has her own YouTube channel. She does not post a lot, but she does read her own translations, and she sings the poems in Persian, really rather beautifully in my inexperienced ear, because I don't speak one word of Persian. But I really enjoyed her previous book of Rumi translations that was gold. In the back over there, you can see that I have some marks of some poems. I did read some poems for Poetry Thursday out of gold. I am almost certainly going to do so again with water. And that completed my bookstore crawl. I made it to all 7 bookstores, or all 6 bookstores, and bought something from every bookstore. And I got a prize for doing that. It's a metal bookmark, Charlottesville Book District. You know, it's a collector's item of sort, I suppose. Or maybe they're just going to sell this at the bookstores later. But I got this by participating in a bookstore crawl, and I had a whole lot of fun doing that. I could not leave Charlottesville without visiting another used bookstore known as the Bookroom. It is not on the pedestrian shopping mall. My wife and I had to drive about 13 minutes on the outskirts of Charlottesville. But it is one of those used bookstores that is just filled with old mass market paperbacks. Mostly romance, but I got some goodies. Hangman by Michael Slade. He is a Canadian horror author. Trinity by Leon Uris. This is a novel of Ireland. It is a beast at 100 or 801 pages long. Print's going to be challenging, but I may be visiting Ireland in August or September, and I want to read about Ireland in a novel, and my buddy Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics says this is a good book to learn about Ireland. And it's got a step back cover. The Stalker by Bill Prozani. This is a crime novel. This was originally published in 1971. Looks exciting. Necroscope by Brian Lumley. This is the first in a series of vampire novels. I blame Michael K. Vaughan 100% for me buying this book. He talked about this book, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago. And he really liked this as the beginning of a series. And I think there's like 6 books in it. And this one, it's not short. It's 500 pages long. And it was originally published in 1986. I have read some shorter Brian Lumley books, and he's a decent author. The Stake by Richard Lehman. Yes, I know Richard Lehman is a bit of a sleazy author. He's a little too fascinated with women's anatomy and likes to mention their body parts, probably in every chapter. And this is one of his vampire novels. And this one was published in 1991. And it's published by Zebra. You know if it's published by Zebra, it's going to be a little cheesy and a little sleazy. Joseph Wambaugh, The Onion Field. This is a true crime account of some murders committed in Los Angeles. Now, this book was published in the 70s, so the murders may have actually occurred in the 60s. I'll find out. Mr. Midshipman Hornblower by C.S. Forster. I am planning to read Beat to Quarters in this Hornblower saga in the next month of May. Now, Beat to Quarters is the first book chronologically published, but this is the first chronological in the story of Hornblower. So I picked this up just on a whim, saying, well, if I really like Beat to Quarters, I may jump to this one, or I may still try to continue to read in publication order. It was $1. Who cares if I never get to it or not? White Indian by Donald Clayton Porter. This is an historical fiction book. It is a little thick. It is, let's find the end. No, it's not that thick. It's 405 pages long. It just feels thicker than that. And I guess it's about a white man raised by Indians. It is the first in a series of books. This used bookstore had a number of them. It was shelved right next to the Independence books by Dana Fuller Ross. She wrote the series with Independence, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Idaho. She just about historical travel out west. They were hugely popular back in the 80s, and this is from the same publisher, probably trying to cash in on that other series. Again, it was $1. Why not? I may never read it, or maybe I will. Who knows? Well, that is my haul for Independent Bookstore Day 2025. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on reading.